Okay. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I believe this is the 6th in a series of 9 Making the Best Place for All community summits that have taken place over the last several months and will continue through October. My name is Vincent Molden, and I'm the Assistant Director of Community Engagement and Constituent Services for County Executive Pittman. I will be moderating tonight's discussion, and with me is Layla Jones. Say hi, Layla. She is the Community Engagement Officer for this region in the County Executive's office, and she will be taking notes to make sure we follow up on anything, so thank you, Layla. Tonight we have with us some people from our departments, including Mark Wiedemeyer with Inspections and Permits. He's the director. Steve Kai-Ziegler, Director of the Office of Planning and Zoning. And we also have Christina Pompa with us. She's with Planning and Zoning as well. And Brian from Transportation is also here. And am I missing anyone? All right, thank you for representing the departments tonight. Tonight we'll mainly discuss issues around education, the environment, and public safety. After an opening statement from County Executive Pittman, we will spend about 20 minutes discussing each topic, at which point we will have a community member introduce each segment, followed by brief remarks from County Executive Pittman. Then those of you who have signed up to give comments or ask a question will have 1 minute to do so, and the County Executive will respond appropriately. I ask that you keep your remarks to 1 minute, and on each topic area, if you have a comment that does not fall under any of the main subjects, please hold it till the end. We have allotted some time for those comments. County Executive Pittman will make a closing remarks at the end, and we'll stay around for a half hour or so afterward to have some one-on-one discussions with anyone who did not get an opportunity to ask a question or who wants to discuss any issues, challenges, or ideas further. Not everyone who signed up tonight may have the opportunity to speak, so we put that time at the end to have that opportunity. But also, if you have a question that was pre-submitted and we don't get to it, or if you have a question that is inspired by the conversation tonight, you can submit that question to communitysummits@aecounty.org, and we'll be sure to follow up with you. That information can also be found on your agenda on your sheet. Lastly, we also have a QR code on that sheet, which will take you to a survey that you can fill out concerning tonight's event. How can we improve? What other topics should we discuss? These are the types of suggestions we'll be looking for. If you could take a moment after the event to fill that out, that would be super helpful, and it'll dictate how we move forward with these sessions. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce County Executive Pittman. Oh, just walking in, we have Chris Phipps with the, what department is that? Department of Public Works. And now, without further ado, we have County Executive Pittman.
Well, thanks, Vincent, and thanks everybody for coming out. These, I think these are fun. I hope you think that they're fun. This is the best part of being county executive, is being able to be in communities, check in with residents about what we've been doing, what we're still got left to do, what we're doing right, and what we need to do better. And I just want to say a few things before we get into the main topics of education and public safety and the environment about this area, Region 2. And it's, some people have not probably looked at the map, but Region 2 includes Jessup, Annapolis Junction, Laurel, Maryland City, Russet, Fort Meade, Tucson Research Refuge, which is a large part of the region, which has mostly critters in it, and we want to keep it that way, and parts of Hanover. So I think it's an area of the county that maybe hasn't gotten the attention that it deserved in recent years, but it's a part of the county that has grown a lot. Fort Meade obviously is a major producer of jobs, and right now they're continuing to add buildings with about 3,000 new workers coming in this year and each of the coming years with the new office space for NSA and U.S. Cyber Command. And that's a challenge. It's a traffic challenge. It's a schools challenge. It's a housing challenge. It's a time when people really need to think about what the community is going to look like in 5, 10, 20 years. And so the reason that we have these new region boundaries is that we wanted to do planning at the community level. And some of you may remember back in the day, the early 2000s, when Janet Owens was county executive, that there was a small area planning process. There were 16 geographic areas in the county. And I was told when I was running for office some of the stories about the good stories about that engagement process. I was also told later that a lot of those plans were ignored and they were not really included in general development plans, or they not really included in the permitting of subdivisions. And so places were developed that were not intended to be developed, or things weren't done that were promised. And so what we did when we got into the process of doing our new 20-year plan was we said, okay, we're going to do these neighborhood level plans, but 16's too many. We can't afford to do that many plans because of all the staff it would take. We have far fewer staff now than we did in the long-range planning part of plan and zoning at that time. Things were cut during the recession. So we created 9 regions, and I think that they are regions that really do fit communities pretty well, and divided it into 3 sections. And your region, Region 2, is in the process of putting a region plan together. So if you're on the Stakeholder Advisory Committee for Region 2, could you raise your hand? All right, we've got a few people here. And Joe is the chair of that group. And Joe Franco, who's sitting in the front row, brave man sitting in the front row. Only one, except for staff. But I've heard good things about the process. I know right now there's a lot of information that people are being fed. Being on that group, the Stakeholder Advisory Committee, you're not the only people that can engage. Everybody can attend those meetings. Everybody can have input. And there's, I believe, a survey that's going to be coming out soon. So go to aacounty.org/region2, right? That's all you need to do. And there are also really cool maps where you go in and you say on the map, I like this, I don't like that. I want to change this, or I want to change that. So it's pretty simple to engage. And I feel really good about the way our plan and zoning people have engaged people in the planning process, because there's one thing I want to know when I'm done in this job. Hopefully we're talking 4 years from now, but I want to know that we have actually engaged people in a plan that has teeth and that will be followed for the future of our county. Because I got kids who I hope will live here, and I hope I will have grandkids here too. So that's very, very important. And we'll talk about some of those things. I want to, in general, say that the 198 corridor here is very important and an opportunity. We've been waiting for the racetrack rebuild thing to happen, for Laurel Racetrack to get the facelift that's been promised. There is state money that's set aside for this. They haven't started yet, and there's still negotiations going on about exactly what it's going to look like. But to the extent that we have any say in any of that, we're insisting that it be a place that's accessible to the community, that it have trails, that hopefully the MARC station, which is the wave down station, becomes a real station, and that becomes integrated into the community, and that there's some good development that happens there. I know a lot of people have said they would like some nicer restaurants and entertainment venues, and that it be a multi-purpose venue, not just horse racing. And I think you'll see all of that, but it's taking some time. And then my hope is that, obviously we have the hotels on the that have been a problem for especially the folks who live in Russet and Maryland City. And we have, through inspections and through the health department, been in there a lot over the last few years doing inspections, and there have been some improvements in some of those. And they were there again just at the beginning of August, I believe it was. And there were violations that were cited in a lot of the rooms in the Garden Inn, and particularly the Garden Inn. And what's the other one, the first one? There's 2 that are pretty good, and there are 2 that aren't. The Travel Lodge, I guess, is the other one, had 6 violations in rooms, and 12 violations at the Garden Inn. And so that process is going on to clean up. But ultimately, we got them to fill in the pool that was a real danger to the community. But we can't, by law, tell them they have to stop operating. What we can do is change the economics of the area so that better businesses can go in there. And that's what we think will happen with the racetrack redevelopment process, and our economic development team working hard in that corridor to bring in new businesses. So I think the future looks bright for that area. I think most of you in Russet know that we did make a little bit of a change in policy and tradition on the the racetrack impact fee funds and really pushed and got a grant for Russet to be able to build a fence to separate those hotels from the community to make it safer. And I think that's underway. The Russet Community Association is, I think, talking to the contractors for that are going to make that happen. And that will, I think, improve the quality of life for folks in Russet. I also want to say I was out there on Friday at the Oxbow natural area, and we took a tour of the value. If you've never been there, right behind Russet, please go see it. Walk around. There's trails. Be careful. But it is a gem that is, you don't even know that there's a civilized world around you. It's just plain nature, and you can't see, you can barely hear other sounds. And but we were talking about possible improvements that Rec and Parks could do there with some viewing areas, some improvements to the trails to make them a little bit safer, and potentially helping the beavers with their jobs so that the water level doesn't drop quite as far with a watershed protection and restoration program that would help there. So I think I'll stop right there and not get too far into issues that you might raise, and we'll talk about those issues as they come up. In general, I want to say that the county is in better fiscal condition than it's ever been. We all know that because we finally got our AAA bond rating. And I feel like the county council has started to come together. We finally had a bipartisan budget approved this year, and it's funding a lot of the things that we all said that we needed. You know, we've been a growing county, and when I came in, I said we needed to catch up with our growth on infrastructure, on police and fire, on education. We need to actually have enough services to serve our growing population. And we've done that. And I think that's one reason we got that AAA bond rating. And it's one reason that now both parties have come together on the county council and supported a budget finally. So things are good, but we have some major challenges. And I think we'll get into some of those, particularly things like getting our kids to school in the morning. So we'll talk about all those issues, and looking forward to hearing from all of you.
All right, thank you, County Secretary. I would now like to recognize some of the elected officials, dignitaries in the room. We have Senator Pam Byron, Chair of the Region 2 Small Areas Committee, Joe Franco, Delegate Mike Rogers, Delegate Mark Chang, and Jeanette Ortiz, the Chair of the Police Accountability Board. And we also have joining us Erin Karpowitz, who is the Executive Director of ACS. All right, now I'd like to invite Linda Green up to the microphone to introduce our next segment, our first segment on education.
You're tall, Mr. County Executive. Hi, I'm Linda Green, and I want to thank Layla for inviting me to be with you tonight. I'm here because I'm a member of the Fort Meade Community Covenant Council. I'm secretary of the Fort Meade Alliance Foundation, and I'm also vice president of the Arundel County Library Foundation. And what all that means is that I don't work at a paid job anymore. What I do is I do things for the causes and the issues that I care about, and education is definitely one of those. I'm the daughter and the granddaughter of public school teachers. My aunts and my cousins were teachers. My dad was our PTA president. So I learned early the importance of our public schools. And as my husband likes to say, with a very, very funny smile on his face, I'm a proud Belvedere Beaver. I went to Belvedere Heights Elementary School, and I think when I met him many years later, I still had a Belvedere Beaver t-shirt because I never throw anything out. So I know our county executive, and likely all of you here, are concerned about our county's educational system and the many valued employees who keep it running and teach our children. Our county executive has shown his support and his respect for the schools by raising salaries for our teachers, by having a budget that added 50 new positions, and also making sure that the school construction budget focuses on improving our physical facilities and building new schools as well. So back to the Fort Meade Community Covenant Council for just a minute, and why I'm here. First, we are a council made up of organizations from Anne Arundel and Howard counties and the state, all who support Fort Meade. We come together so we can work on projects and speak with one voice. From workforce to economic development, Fort Meade Alliance, Chambers of Commerce, the library, the USO, and very importantly, elected officials at the federal, state, and local level. People like Pam Beidle and Delegate Chang and Delegate Rogers, and I think I see, is that you, Pete? You got a haircut, Pete. I don't recognize you anymore. But a lot who work together. And this year we've undertaken an educational initiative to increase awareness of the positive attributes of our Meade cluster schools, and particularly Meade High School. Working closely with the Anne Arundel County School System and Fort Meade Public Affairs, we're crafting an awareness campaign, as one member said at our last meeting, to change the chatter about Meade schools. When people go to choose whether to come to Fort Meade or not, they're evaluating whether they want to be here many times based on what they think about our school system. And we want to change the dialogue and improve the dialogue where people know that there are good things that happen, good programs that are going on, and that it's a good place for your children to be. We've called ourselves the Friends of Meade, and the first thing we're going to do to launch our initiatives is an open house that we're going to have at Meade Middle School on October the 1st, which is aimed at parents, students, and the community to highlight the positive programs, the successes in our schools, and to showcase the partners throughout the community, many of whom I mentioned before, who are ready and willing to help students at our schools. We also believe that the construction and the opening of the new Meade High School will be a great opportunity coming up fairly soon to demonstrate another positive about schools in this area. So my question to you tonight, Mr. County Executive, when it's your turn to answer questions, is how's the construction of the new Meade High School coming along? Thank you.
Well, I can't give you a whole lot of detail about that, but I can tell you that it's 2024 is when it's supposed to be open. Is that correct? Yeah. And they're on track. Does anybody in the room have any other? They generally stay on track on those. They're pretty conservative about their estimates. But it's practically a rebuild. I mean, it's a $125 million project of $125 million in federal money that we got, thanks to being on the fort. So there are great benefits to being on the fort. And it is practically going to be a new high school. And I'm just so gratified that there is a community group, the Friends of Meade High School, that has organized to really usher in the new look, the new school. The school's reputation is not as good as the school actually is. I mean, the students that graduate from Meade High School are fantastic. The staff is fantastic. It's a great school. So that's going to be really good for this area. It's going to create a sense of enthusiasm. In general, though, I do have to say about the school system that while I am optimistic, I am worried now. We are facing staff shortages throughout the economy, throughout the government, and where we really feel it and it really hurts the most is in our kids' schools. So when we know that we're short on teachers, when we especially see every morning now we're short on bus drivers, even after giving the school system everything they've asked for, budget-wise, more than ever, it's still hard to hire. So we've created 500 new teaching positions in the last 4 years, and all these special ed teachers. We've done the hiring and retention bonuses for bus drivers. It's still a challenge because we are competing with the rest of the economy. We're competing with Amazon for drivers. We're competing with every industry. So that's our challenge. I believe that the Blueprint for Education, the state of Maryland's blueprint, has answers for a lot of that, making the teaching profession not only higher paid, but with more career advancement and more training and more respect and more time to plan lessons. My sister teaches at Annapolis High School, and it's being a classroom teacher is an incredibly difficult, stressful time. It takes over your life, and after a few years, especially young people who get into the job, couple of years and they just decide maybe this isn't the lifestyle I want. It's just too much for me. So I think the changes that are coming in the state of Maryland are going to be positive. I believe that we're going to have a governor. I believe the next governor is going to be Wes Moore. Anything can happen. It's still have an election, but I know that he's committed to implementing the blueprint and has studied education and funded education in the nonprofit world as well, and is committed. And I know that we on the county council, and I think the future county council as well, and myself are committed. And we have a new superintendent, Dr. Bedell, who I just spent the morning going around to schools with. We were going around together and talking to teachers and staff. And I kind of felt like just a wallflower, because he was peppering them with incredibly good questions, and getting at some of the weaknesses that we need to make stronger in our schools. So we have a great school system, but we have a lot of opportunity to make it better. And this is a tough year.
Thank you, County Executive. And now just showing us is Jansen Evelyn, who is the Executive Director of the Police Accountability Board. I would now like to call on several of you to give a comment or ask a question to the County Executive. You'll have 1 minute to discuss something on the topic of education. Please make sure you speak directly into the mic so everyone can hear you, and state your name before asking the question. We'll start with Chad Jones.
We're letting him speak? Just kidding.
Well, thank you all for having me. I'm Chad Jones. I am Public Affairs Officer at Fort Meade. I guess the only comment I would like to add to what Ms. Green said in regards to the Friends of Meade is that it is not just about Meade High School. There are 13 schools tied to the Meade High cluster, 7 elementary schools, 2 middle schools. Most of them are off of Fort Meade in this area, and really the whole purpose is, we're a $26 billion industry, and our most closest neighbors don't see it. We have problems in our school with math, and we are the math capital of the world. So what can we do as a partner, bringing everybody together to help all those schools? So the Meade Friends of Meade Day on October 1st, we're actually busing families from the different elementary schools into the cluster to Meade Middle School, so that we can build that sense of community, so that when you start school as a kindergartner here in one of the Meade cluster schools and work all the way up, that pride is built in through the community organizations that Ms. Green talked about, so that community starts from its schools, and that's really where we think we can have the biggest impact. So no real question besides that, just wanted to add that extra information.
Thank you. I agree, but based on what you're just saying about the relationship between the community and the schools, that is something that county government can help with. County government doesn't run the school system. They only write the check at the beginning of each year. But when we were looking at the opportunity gap in our schools and trying to figure out what county government can do, the one area that was clear was kindergarten readiness, because that happens before they even get to school. And that's why our libraries came out with their new plan to help with kindergarten readiness, and our Opportunity Gap Commission's goal is to increase our numbers on kindergarten readiness, because that's about housing, it's about quality of life in families, it's about transportation, it's about all of those things, and the public facilities that we have in our county, particularly at our libraries. So when we talk about community schools, which is one of the new trends, and it's in the blueprint, it's an opportunity for our county government and our communities and our school system to all work together, and we're making progress on that.
Excellent. Up next we have Michelle Weathers, if you could please stand. Right behind you. You have 1 minute, please speak to the mic. Okay. So I'm calling on you to, as a registration desk, if you would like to ask a question. So up next is Lee Martin. Please stand.
Yes, I'm Lee Martin. My question basically was about the tax revenue for Maryland Live. You just stated that 2024, Meade High School, the new one, but this was maybe close to 14, 15 years ago with Maryland Live, so I'm like, why did it take this long? But if Meade High School is on the base, if that's several dollars that's going towards that, then that's what answers my question. But still, there's other schools around the county, especially that feed into Meade, is that still in place with the tax dollars? I mean, the tax revenue from Maryland Live is supposed to be going to helping with education. So that was my question.
Yeah, it is. And there was a time early on with all the casinos where the state government thought they could mingle the money a little bit, so that they took the casino money to put into education, but then they took other money out of education and put it somewhere else. And then the voters in the last election passed a referendum that stopped that, the lockbox, so that it's actually, they can't do that anymore. But we also there's some money from the casino that goes to it's the 3 mile radius around the casino, the local development council. And there are people in this room who are part of the body that makes recommendations on how that gets spent. And that gets spent for community-based organizations to help the area. But yeah, most of the casino money does go into education for the state, and then the state distributes it.
So wouldn't Anne Arundel County sort of get a larger share because Maryland Live is in Anne Arundel County?
Well, that's where the LDC money comes in. So there's a certain pot of money that, it's about $10 million a year now, right? 18. It went up to 18. It used to be 10. Okay. And that gets distributed locally. And some does go to schools. Some of the grants go to schools, some go to the fire stations, some go to the parks. It goes to a lot of different things. Yeah.
I've been here quite a while, and Maryland Live started off very small. Then they got the application for the table games, and they expanded. Now they have, I think, 2 hotels.
Yeah.
And Meade High School is just now getting done in 2024, so like something like that up there, you can these hotels and expand the casino faster, which is fine, but I'm thinking for at least the new elementary school, because I live in Fieldstone, we moved in 2010, they've expanded 3 times,
Yeah.
so that's even more kids going to school. So unless there's another, they go to Maryland City Elementary, then they go to MacArthur, the high school. So I haven't seen anything about a new elementary school in our area or junior high school for that matter. My kids have already graduated, but still, there's kids still waiting at the bus stop. So I'm asking questions on their behalf.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that was where I believe the county had failed for a long time. The county had always tried to do things on the cheap and not built the infrastructure we needed to accommodate the growth, and the schools was the #1 area. So in fact, this last budget was the first one where the county fully funded the whole capital budget request of the school board. And over the last few years, we've managed to keep up with the school construction timeline that was created by an outside consultant that came in and said, okay, here's what you need for schools. Here's the schools that are falling apart that you need to rebuild. Here are the schools where you need them because of population growth. And so it's been expensive. We had to do, that first year, we created the Permanent Public Improvements Fund for infrastructure. It was 0.1% of your income tax. And it all went into those infrastructure improvements, and most of that went to schools. And that's why there's so much school construction going on. The Meade, Old Mill clusters in particular, taken off. And then there'll be redistricting because there'll be different schools in different places, but it's finally catching up. And the new West County Elementary is one that is helping to relieve some of the pressure in West County. So it's all being handled finally. I can't say why it took so long. It took so long because people wanted to do it on the cheap. They just didn't keep up.
All right, up next we have Connie Deatherich.
I'm a parent of twins that go to 2 different schools in the system. One goes to Brooklyn Park Middle School, he's in the now Apex Arts, and one goes to Chesapeake Science Point, which is a charter school. It allows me to see a very distinct difference between how charter schools are being run and our public schools are being run. The charter school does not provide for transportation, so I have to pay for that, but by paying for it, the bus always comes, always. My other son who goes to a public school, his bus has not come yet. He doesn't have a driver, and he goes to a school, which I'm grateful that our county has magnet schools, but it's extremely far away. I don't need to echo how many kids we still see feedback about training and offered that we may look at alternative ways of training people and looking at underprivileged communities to target to bring in CDL drivers. I got a very good education from her on CDL and an additional requirement. So I'm not saying that you did not know that, but I think you have more resources outside of the AACPS community. You have more relationships that you can build that the spinoff would benefit AACPS. I think that that's a part of your role as the county exec. I may be wrong in that. I'm from New York. We have mayors. While I'm here, so I am saying, could you please look into additional training to get additional people to be CDL drivers that can help us alleviate. I think if we're down to 46 bus routes without drivers as of today. Second, continuing to partner with neighboring counties. So I was happy to hear, I think that says Linda from her reading classes, working with Howard County. We happen to be in a part of the county that's sometimes the stepchild because we're so far west that a lot of the residents here do leverage services from Howard County and PG County just off of location. So if we can, I don't know if you talk to their county exec regularly, but if we could do that, so sometimes maybe we might not charge us out of county fees when we really just live a few blocks over. And the last thing I would say is not really education, is the widening of 198 going down. They put in I think they're going to be putting in a light, but that is what hurts us with the Fort Meade. I work in Fort Meade. I was military. I'm now civilian. I work there. That bottleneck stopped me from taking my children to anything at Fort Meade and actually pushed me towards Howard County services because it was ridiculous to get to that side of our own county. And I'm sure education actually feels that too, because I have to go that way now to drop my children off at Odenton Library. So training, partnership with counties, and widening that road, please. Thank you. Talk to all of those, or maybe none of those, but.
So the widening you're talking about, Chris Phipps might be able to help me with this and the status of the project, but do you know where she's talking about?
It's a state highway, so we have to get the state highway to commit that into their, what they call consolidated transportation. And that's actually coming up, so where they are speaking to the local projects and listening to the elected officials.
When it washed out, I couldn't believe they just put it back to 2 lanes. I was like, it washed out. This is the perfect time to just fix it and build.
You're talking about
Building, they will come.
at the bridge?
Yes.
Yeah.
Down
So,
to that part, it cuts off.
So that's not in the plan,
It's
though?
not in the plan.
It's not.
That's gonna take some funding to the CTP and lobbying.
And that's a whole game that we've gotten pretty good at playing compared to other counties. We had one of the state's top 10 priorities a few years ago. Now we have 6 of the state's top 10 priorities. Question is whether we can get them to fund those. But we did that by putting money on the table and saying, we're willing to invest in your road if you will invest in your road. And that's been working somewhat. I'm hoping that with our relationship with an incoming administration, that we'll be able to do even better in getting attention on our county roads. The CDL, the driver training, that is something that we can help with. And when this all started a year ago, and I started getting pretty aggressive and going to school board meetings and eventually offered to use county funds to do the hiring and retention bonuses. The other thing that we did is we brought workforce development, our Workforce Development Corporation in. We talked to the state about streamlining the process for the CDL licenses, that's state law, and got some progress on that, made it free, and are expediting it. But workforce development has been a really good partner with the school system in doing recruitment, hiring fairs, and I'm sure there's more that we can do, but they're working overtime to do exactly that. I mean, it's being treated as an emergency, but we're still not there.
I would offer that she specifically mentioned language barriers. So when my children were in Rockbridge, we have a large Latin population. We have a lot of students that were in ESL, and they even at Rockbridge at that time, I'm not sure, we're in middle school now,
HR, for every 10 employees, you do expect to retain some. So we may have to bring on 100 to get that 47, but we should be aiming to get that 100.
Yeah.
So we can get 47.
And we also can get around it by using smaller vehicles where you don't have to have a CDL license, and we'd had to get a waiver from the state to do that. And we've started that, the school system, I should say, has started that process, waiting on those vehicles that are on order. So all of those things take time that we don't have right now.
I'd like a tax credit if I have to drive my kids to school. I know I put that in my email to
Yeah.
you. Please, please, because gas is not going
Yeah.
down.
All right.
So we have time for one more on education. If anyone would like to pose a question or make a comment, please stand. All righty.
Anyway, I wasn't expecting to ask a question, but a couple of things came to mind. One is, I think the comment was that how great it is to have a relationship with Fort Meade in terms of funding, but there seemed to be a lot of misunderstanding on the part of some of your staff at SAC meeting as to how access to the fort is regulated for non-U.S. citizens that may send their kids there. So I know one of the SAC members had to do a little schooling on their own to educate how that works in Fort Meade. But the transportation subject, the school system capacity and school building all came up in recent SAC meetings. And the outlook was not very good. Your staff was warning the SAC members of issues with funding, issues with timelines. After the school issue came up, it was like, well, it's 6 years out. But none of that, the infrastructure for the roads, the school development, none of that has seemed to have any effect, including the surveys done by Arundel Community College and the Plan 2040 CAC surveys of the community. None of this has had any effect to slow down the development, which is the feedback we've been getting for 5 years, 4 years. So that was my comment.
Okay.
All right, we will now transition into the topic of environment and health. So I'd like to introduce Jay Shepard to this podium.
Better get out of the way.
Did I see a little light here?
You want to lower it? or-
No,
I think it's on, isn't it?
No, it's not on. Oh, well. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Pittman, for inviting me. My name is Jay Shepard. I have been a resident of Maryland City since 1977. I'm a retired biologist for the federal government, and so I have a little interest in the environment. So that's where I've been working since I retired last century. And I just wanted to bring up a few points that over the past couple decades, I've been conducting bird surveys and helping clean up the trails and cleaning dead trees that fall across them and that sort. Over here to the nice little park land area known as the Oxbow Nature Preserve and Natural Area. And it is 330 acres of public land, almost all of which, all but 50 acres, is owned by the county. The other 50 acres is owned by Maryland Department of Natural Resources. And in the middle of this is a little gem of a lake, which you cannot see from any road presently in existence, thank goodness. It's a 75-acre Oxbow Lake that is touted to be, as far as I can tell it is, the largest natural lake in the state of Maryland. We're not a glaciated state, so All the lakes that you see generally in the state are man-made. They've been put a dam in and backed up water, created the lake, reservoir, whatever you want to call it. So a natural lake is very hard to come by in our part of the world. This lake, though, is maintained by beavers. And unfortunately, the Little Patuxent River, which goes just to the north side of the Oxbow, is draining much of Howard County, if not all of it, it seems like. And there's been a lot of development up there. I did a count a few years back. We had 17 major floods in about 8 years that came down through the river there. Now, by major, I mean they went over the floodplain bank. Smaller floods still take out our beaver dam. And that's what stabilizes, the dam itself is what stabilizes the lake and the vegetation. At times, the 75-acre lake last year was reduced to, for example, down to, we just estimated, about 10 acres. When the dam went out, the lake drained, and we had nothing but mud flats, which became covered with vegetation, which is fine when it filled back up, but it took a while for the beavers to rebuild those dams, because over the decades, they've chewed down all the vegetation that was in the immediate vicinity of their dam sites to help build their dams. In recent years, 1 or 2 of the dams were essentially cattails and mud, and I built, as a little kid, better dams than what those beavers were building when I played in my creeks in my neighborhood. So this Oxbow Lake, like I say, it sits in a caldera of sorts, not literally a caldera, but a sink area that you cannot see from the road, surrounded by forest, the parkland, and we are really envious of the beavers having such a lovely view every night when they come out. Most of us don't even get to see it. How many, out of curiosity, how many people even have seen the lake at the Oxbow? Can raise your hand. That's impressive. That's impressive. I expecting with this audience it would be only about 10% or 15%. I think that covers most of my points. So my basic question to the county exec is, can we find some way to stabilize the water, which he already somewhat alluded to in his opening remarks, which I thank you, and also see if we can get a few other little improvements to this parkland, the trails improvement and a few other amenities thereof.
Well, first, just thank you, both of you, for the work that you do. And I know you're not alone, but I think primarily the two of you in maintaining that and maintaining the trails. There are places in the county that are very natural, that are owned by rec and parks. This is also owned by the state and conservancy, but we wouldn't be able to own as much land as county government if we didn't have residents maintaining some of it, particularly some of the more natural trails. That somebody has to go out there and keep them open when trees fall and pick up the trash that people drop invariably and all that. So thank you for that. And thank you for advocating also. Yes, I believe that what we committed to on Friday when we walked was we were going to talk with Eric Michelson, Watershed Protection and Restoration at Public Works, about that. We know that he's aware of the dam situation, the situation of the dam, and helping the beavers with their dam so that when the water levels drop, it doesn't drop to the point where the fish and the wildlife that are out there die, because it gets dried out, so that we keep it at a higher level and a more consistent level. And it makes a lot of sense to invest something in some improvements to the accessibility for the public. And, you know, I could just say, obviously, we've done a lot for the environment as a county government with forest conservation and the way we do modifications on environmental issues and development review, and that has stopped some developments that were clearly bad developments that shouldn't take place in some parts of our county, and enforcement when there are violations, and changing the code to some degree for those things. But the bigger picture is that we have a green infrastructure master plan that the county council just approved that requires us not only to preserve and protect more land, 30% of our land mass in perpetuity by the year 2030, which we could get to if we got back to our old pace of doing it that we used to have, but also better managing what we have. And that includes getting rid of invasive species, and we've put money into $500,000 for the first time into rec and parks for a vegetative management plan. And we have great organizations in this county, the Watershed Stewards and others, that engage people, an army of volunteers, really, like you, to go out and do some of that work with us. So it's partly public education, it's partly doing the work, it's partly having the plan so that the forests that we have, the land that we have, really does support an ecosystem and really does create quality soil that absorbs water so that it doesn't all end up in the wrong places. Lots of work to do in that area still.
All right, we're now open up the public comment section. So I will call your name, please stand, someone will come to you with the mic. Please keep the mic close to your mouth so everyone can hear you. You have 1 minute to speak. Michelle Weathers? No? Okay. Lee Martin? No? Okay, is there anyone who would like to speak on environment and health? Please stand.
So my name is Cheryl Arundel. Hi, how are you? I'm running for County Council for District 4. I also am president of WORK, which is Campbell's Events and Recreational Council. There is a landfill that is going to be put in on, or proposed to be put in, right next to that park, where all of my kids play their sports. And I don't understand how that could be possible, that's even a proposed idea. I know it isn't this area. However, our parks and areas to play for these kids in this county, very rich county, are horribly kept. I'm trying my best to make sure that they all are in tip-top shape, because it helps us parents get our kids off of the devices. They're playing baseball and softball instead of the devices. So I work hard to do that. I'm going to send you an email and ask you that question on why we're putting a landfill next to a park that just got redone. And our recycle, why isn't it streamlined? It seems to me they're always tagging me for trying to recycle bags and whatnot. We're one of the richest counties, and we don't have a streamlined recycle system. That's my question. That's my second question. Thank you.
I'm gonna let Chris Phipps start thinking about his answer on recycling while I answer the other part, and then I'm gonna let you answer the recycling question, because Chris is the expert. We are not putting in a landfill, the Tolson landfill I know you're talking about, and no, we're not putting it in. In fact, we're trying to prevent it from being put in. And just like the Chesapeake Terrace landfill right next to Two Rivers, which would have thousands of trucks, dump trucks going throughout Crofton and Two Rivers and even up towards Odenton. And sometimes the owners of the land who want to put it in, it's for profit, and they fight hard to do it. And I mean, the Chesapeake Terrace one has gotten a ton of press lately because they've inserted themselves into the county executive's race, as you know, with $250,000 to try to remove me from office, because we think we've stopped that one, and we've got them stopped in their tracks. So they need to replace the politicians that are stopping them before to give them a chance. And it is a constant struggle to try to enforce our land use laws and try to improve the quality of our people's lives, rather than let bad development, whether it's a landfill or another kind of development, destroy the quality of people's lives. So that's a major part of my job. It's what Office of Plan and Zoning does. It's what long-range planning does. It's what the region plans are. When we have a growing county, if we were out in a place where nobody wanted to be and everybody was leaving, we wouldn't have these issues. But we have we're the best place for all. So of course developers want to build here, and we're saying we want good development. We want to stop bad development. So, but it's you got to follow the law when you do it, and it's an ongoing battle.
Recycling, did you want recycling?
Very-
Recycling?
Oh, recycling, yes, yes, yes. Streamline the recycling, yeah.
I'm not clear what the streamlining, if you could,
Well, so I used to live in Harford County, and then I went to Anne Arundel County and back and forth twice. So with streamlined recycling, you basically put, when you go to any, say Target or Walmart, and you have the bags, you can put them all in one big bag, and they go in your recycle bin with everything else. And Anne Arundel County doesn't do that.
Right.
I get flagged on it all the time,
So-
because I forget.
So we don't accept plastic bags because the way our single stream recycling works, it all goes into one big container. Anything that's eligible for recycling, paper, plastic, metal, glass, goes to a sorting facility. So they have to sort everything out into those distinct categories, paper, plastic, metal, and glass. And when there's plastic in there, especially the bags, they gum up the sorting equipment, gears, and the ability to sort everything. So what was happening was if there's too much of that, where the outlet, where this ultimately goes, that manufacturer can't accept that material. And we're getting a lot of what we call contamination in our recycling, because when you have one big bin and you just throw everything in there that you think is recyclable, sometimes, and I think we're all guilty of this, we maybe err on the side of maybe, this shouldn't have gone into recycling, but it goes into recycling, like a greasy pizza box or something like that, still has cheese on it. And I never leave cheese on a pizza box. But when that happens, what was happening was, and I don't want to get too into the weeds here, but it's an interesting topic. China was really looking, they needed raw material resources, and they were using a lot of the recycled material that we were bringing. And they could use that stuff that was contaminated to a point. And as their economy and their manufacturing got more precise and defined, they couldn't use this material that was so contaminated. So they started ratcheting back, and then that comes across the shore, comes to our recycling facilities, and then our handlers say, sorters, which are private sector, say, we can't take your material, it's too contaminated. In fact, ours got up to 28 or 26% contamination. So there was that much non-recyclable material in the yellow bin. And they said, you're at risk of losing your contract. You're going to stop your trucks from coming if you don't. So that's when we went on a comprehensive campaign, and everyone's I got flagged myself because my wife put something wrong in the bin.
It was her fault, huh?
And I directed them not to take my stuff away because it was contaminated. But it happens. And a year of that campaign, and we reduced our recycling contamination rate down to 12%, which was within the contract value limit. So we were able to maintain our contract. So
That was a big win, too, because we were worried about that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We had nowhere to take that material. It would have been landfill because it has to go somewhere.
And that's my point, with the landfills and just trying to, because I was putting things in bags.
Yep.
But separating the can and thought I was being helpful, and we're not
Right.
taking it.
Now, what I encourage you to do is take those bags back to the shops, to Giant, Safeway, or whatever grocery store, they take them there. Because it is recyclable.
Yes.
They actually make Trex decking, that composite
Yeah.
deck form, out of that material. So it is recyclable, it just can't go into the single stream.
And now I'm using my bags, and I'm not,
Yeah.
trying to get rid of all the plastic.
All right, do you have another question for Byron? Oh, in the back.
I have two different topics. One, I have received a number of complaints on the walking trail that begins at Rock Ridge Elementary School and goes out to the ball fields. And then there's a number of trees there, and the roots have broken up the path. And I wonder whether that could be looked at and repaired to make it safer for those people who do walk that every day. And I would appreciate that. The second thing is that you mentioned Oxbow Lake. Just to the west of that is the Patuxent River that comes into it. And I ride quite often on Rock Ridge Road, north of Whiskey Bottom Road and near Route 32. Crossing over the bridge, I notice there's hundreds of people seem to be going into the water. I'm just wondering how safe the water is. I noticed that somebody has blocked off a lot of the parking areas along that area, so they cannot park in the safe area, and therefore they're almost parking on Rockbridge Road, making that dangerous also for people who are driving along. And I'd like to get answers to both of those places. Thank you.
It's a no parking zone.
So I don't have answers on either of those. We can check with Western District Police about the situation with the parking there, and safety issues, whether there've been accidents, whether there've been, drownings or injuries in the water. I don't have answers to that, or whether they've been enforcing anything there. What was the first part? That was about the trail. Yeah, is that Rec and Parks? Do you know? Is that Anne Arundel Rec and Parks on that trail? Okay, we'll write that down and get that checked out.
All right, do we have any more for environment? Okay, right here in front.
Thank you. My name is Gary Moeller from Jessup. Okay, Gary Moeller from Jessup. 4 years ago when you were running, you talked about the benefits to the mental well-being of us citizens by having green stuff around, trees, plants, and whatnot. So the county preserves a third of the county where you live, South County, and it's keeping it very pretty down here. Unfortunately, West County is not faring out too well. So we're seeing a great video that was done and is available. It was done by Growth Action Network, and it was a video of the development on 198 watershed, and has aerial shots. You can just see the massive amount of clear cutting, the impact to local homeowner, talks about the animals and how they disappeared. So I think that's important to all of us. I think it was important to you 4 years ago. We don't see, like I said, I've been here for 72 years, and I just see more and more green disappearing in Jessup where I live, in West County in particular. The impact of that development, and it's documented in the video by Dan, is just scary what it's going to do to the watershed, what it's doing to Tucson River, and they're not done. So I'd like your comment on these kind of massive amount of developments. What can we do in West County, or what you could possibly do to help keep West County, what's left, a best place to live? Because you kind of have to doing that in South County, but we're not seeing it here in West County. And the infrastructure, the resources.
Mr. Miller, please conclude your remarks.
SAC members brought it up at one of the last meetings. We're seeing these kind of resources in other parts of the county, but it's like, why isn't it here in West County?
Right. So the Green Infrastructure Master Plan isn't the South County thing. A lot of the land in South County is like that, not because it's been protected by the government, because it's agricultural and people have kept it that way. And it is zoned agricultural. Most counties have agriculturally zoned areas so that they don't have to put the services in and have the expense of having those services there. So no sewer and water and less services. But it is a county-wide effort, and it is even in urban areas to try to green them, to plant more trees in communities that are gray, that don't have much green and trees. As far as the video that you're talking about in that development, I mean, that I mentioned earlier that when you're doing development policy and when you're permitting subdivisions and permitting things, you have no choice but to comply with the laws that are on the books. And so we came in and we made an attempt to protect. We had lost more forest space than any other county in the last decade, and we made an attempt to strengthen. We did strengthen our forest conservation laws. They were weak and they were often not even being enforced in the development review process. And so we introduced a bill to the county council to strengthen the Forest Conservation Act. And that bill that passed It did pass 7-0, but it wasn't the bill we introduced. It was a bill that was heavily amended. And one of those amendments was to grandfather in any project that had been pre-approved or was in the pipeline. So the project that you're talking about would have been, under the original bill, much more expensive and maybe impossible to do that development where the forests were. It might have been too costly because of the cost of remediating all that forest loss. But they were under the old bill because of the grandfathering clause, which I opposed, my administration opposed, but it passed. And I signed the bill because it was better than what we had before. And that was one of a number of projects that got grandfathered in through forest conservation. So, we don't win them all, but I believe that our development should be focused on redevelopment places where we already have impervious surface, and we want to improve it. And there's a lot of development that can be done in this county. There's development by train stations where we can actually have mixed use so that we get fewer cars on the road. People can use the train, and they can also live and work and be entertained in the same area, and they don't have to drive anywhere. So to me, that's good development. And bad development is destroying our natural resources and sprawl, where you put a neighborhood here and then the workplace is over there and the shopping area is over there and everybody's zipping around in cars all the time, and we have a traffic nightmare and an environmental disaster. So that's what we mean by smart growth, but we don't win on every project.
Okay, we are now going to transition to public safety. So I can invite Mark Lowe to the podium.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I was asked to speak about public safety today. So a couple issues. I happen to be the current president of the Russet HOA, which is just adjacent to this property over here. We have about 13,000 residents, about 2,700 individual units made up of condominiums, single-family homes, and townhouses. And the public safety that I want to talk about this evening is we're seeing an increased number of people down on their luck, beggars, vagrants, whatever name you want to apply to them, that are on our streets. And what comes to mind immediately is the squeegee workers that were downtown Baltimore. Just so happens, as was discussed earlier, I happen to drive downtown Baltimore because of the bus problem that's already been discussed. And they're no longer on the streets because there was an unfortunate incident. I assume that's why they're not on there. So my question will come back to what is being done to help address that problem. For Russet's particular instance, we also have problems on 198 here, as everybody else does. And I've heard the excuses from many people. It's a state highway, and we have enough political resources that we need to get the state to operate on this highway and fix the problems that are occurring on this highway, because they're ongoing and they have been for many years. In Russet's case, we were fortunate enough to be able to apply for a grant from the Laurel Racecourse Impact Fee Committee, and Russet did a security audit back in 2015 to help address some of the problems we were seeing from the people moving down from 198. Russet is an open community, but it's not a gated community is what I should say, but we're seeing a lot of people transverse through the community from 198 and causing various problems in our community. I mean, we've had reports of some guy was running naked around in the streets, hopped up on whatever he was hopped up on, and we've had other serious incidents like that. So in Russet's case, we did a security audit back in 2015. We did another security audit this year. They recommended a barrier. As I alluded to, we applied to the Laurel Racecourse Impact Fee Committee, and we were awarded a grant. So we're actually going to put a barrier up on our property, in Russet's property, bordering 198, the businesses on 198 in Russet, to help alleviate the flow that's transversing through people's private property when they're coming into the community. Nothing wrong with driving into the community or using the walking paths, but we don't want to cut them through private property, through people's yards, and misbehaving. So my question comes back to the county executive. What are we doing to try to help address the vagrant situation, is the name that I'll apply to them, that is occurring in our county specifically, You can go up to Chick-fil-A, where those places are, you'll see somebody out there. Same thing at the Walmart, Sam's Club entrance in Russet, that's on Russet property as well. And this seems to be increasing, so I'm wondering what the restrictions are, why we can't intervene in some way to help these people or move these people out or address them, whatever their needs would be. And that's my question.
So I hadn't been in office long before this issue came up in Russet and the hotels in particular on 198, and I knew about it before that as well. And so a combination of things is the answer, and the combination is, one is social services and opportunity. So we put a social worker into actually one of the hotel rooms for some time to work with the people, and in some cases families that were in the Garden Inn who actually had kids going to school. I mean, we have kids that go to our schools that are classified as homeless, and they're living in those apartments and might have a cook stove even though it's illegal, and they're paying rent every single day. So having social services there, working on getting them into transitional housing and getting them connected with workforce development to employment. Some of them are actually employed, believe it or not, but are in very low-wage jobs. And connecting them to services, basically. All the services that the county has, because a lot of folks came here from other places and don't know what services are available. So that's one step, that's one part of it. Part of it is the health department and the inspections, so that we don't have substandard housing that's illegal operating in those hotels and other places in the county. And then another is just public safety. And so our police department, when I came in, we were under 700 sworn officers, and the International Association of Police Chiefs had done an assessment of our county and shown that it had grown and said we should be at least 825. And some of those positions had been created, but there hadn't been an effort to actually fill the positions. So we managed to get to 800. It's dropped some since then. We've had a lot of retirements, and it's been harder in the last couple of recruitment classes to bring people in, just like everywhere else in the labor market. But we're still in the upper 700s, and that's helped somewhat. So there are actually more officers on the streets than there have been, but they can't be everywhere, and they can't be all the time. And our officers, I think, are pretty good about, they require people to comply with the law, but they also help people connect with services in their community policing efforts. The squeegee kids, they have done a good job as well. Our police department was very careful about how they handled that, and they actually got some kids hired on jobs. Workforce development came in, and they helped to, and it's been kind of waning, but they've required them to leave at times. And going forward, I mean, there are a few things that we have to do. First of all, public safety is a fundamental obligation of government. And so we have to make sure that the police department and the fire department and Office of Emergency Management and Detention, they all have the resources that they need and the tools that they need to do their jobs. But also we need to have good school system, and we need to have good social services. And then some people hate it when I say this, but we need affordable housing too. We need housing that is affordable for our workforce. And it seems like every time there is an affordable housing development, a building that is put up that is dedicated to people at 80% or below of median income or 60% or below of median income. And it often requires subsidies, state low-income housing tax credits, a tax break, the payment in lieu of taxes that the county has always done for those. It requires really creative financing to pull it off because it's so expensive to construct the housing, and the land is expensive, and we're in a market-based economy. So we have to do things to ensure that we're doing the housing affordability. We need to do more, I think, and we need to do some of that in our zoning code. We need to make it possible for developers to build something other than the cookie-cutter suburbia stuff, and some people call it missing middle housing, where maybe it's smaller. There are people who don't want a large house, and that makes it more affordable. So we have to get creative and strategic. Anybody who's interested in that can talk to Aaron Karpowitz from Arundel Community Development Services, who's sitting right here, and whose job is to to help us meet those needs. And, you know, we won't do enough affordable housing that we won't have anybody on the streets. But if we don't try, we don't get anywhere and make any progress.
We will now open it up for public comment. Raymond Supersky.
Supersinski?
Want to comment on, I want to comment, Mr. Parks, on the squeegee kids and the vagrants. I have noticed within about the last month or so, I want to commend the Railroad County Police. I'd be driving along 198 or maybe go to Walmart or somewhere, and I'd see a police car with its lights on. And lo and behold, I think there's a car in front of it that they're arresting for speeding and all that. But no, it's because somebody's there with a small cardboard sign saying I'm homeless or whatever. And they're not harassing them or anything, but it seems like they're talking to them and trying to get them off the street. Because it is dangerous for them to go out there in the moving traffic and all that. We've had quite a few people who have been hurt. So I do want to commend the police on that. Thank you.
You know, I want to add one more thing about the police. You know, you hear people in politics talking about, oh, the sky is falling. You always, you know, the sky's always falling, and we do have a perception that it's a really uncertain time that we live in, and we don't know what the next crisis is going to be, whether it's a virus or it's a spree of crime or it's a hurricane or whatever it is. People are feeling like nervous about the future, as all of us are, but in Anne Arundel County, the major categories of crime from 18 to 21, the last year we have full statistics, all of them have been reduced by 10% or more. And that's just what the statistics show. And I do credit that to, we have strong communities, we have a good school system, we have good police department, and we're doing some things right. We have a lot more work to do, though. Yeah.
Up next, we have Lee Martin.
Thank you. Goes to my ring notifications. It's like every day I get something about somebody checking doors, breaking into cars, stealing parts off cars. Is there some the police where they actually do some sort of patrol through Fieldstone, Rusted, or do they just come whenever you call it? Is there, what I'm trying to say is, do they actually patrol, or they just, what exactly are they trying to do to help curb it? They told us, lock your doors, have some sort of lighting, we doing, but still, is there something else that can be done to sort of curtail this type of behavior?
Well, they do have patrols, but they're usually not there when the person's breaking into the car, or the person breaking into the car, you know, is probably aware of where the patrol car is, and which is why people have to report things. Yeah, I don't think we'll ever have enough officers patrolling to catch them when they're in the act of those kinds of violations.
So is it like I'm pretty sure it's not just here in Laurel where this is happening. I'm pretty sure there's other parts of the county. So is it like a task force, or they're just like, hopefully it's not due today, so there's something being done proactively?
There is the PCRC, Police Community.
Yeah, there's a police community relations councils, and they meet with the district in each district.
You could go to that meeting.
Yeah, I mean, they do have meetings where you can go. But feel free to call the district commander as well. They'll pick up the phone and talk to anybody and ask them those questions. And I probably should have had them here tonight. We'll make sure that the next one we do have the district commander there to be able to talk about the statistics in the district on every kind of violation and exactly where the patrols are and how that all works. But I don't have a good answer for you other than, like they always say, report it, keep your car locked, all those things.
Do we have any other comments or questions for public safety?
Hi, my name is Abby, and I am a resident of
resolution or a solution or even short term, what do we do immediately? Because I'm torn between danger and compassion. I want to reach out, but I'm also hesitant to reach out because these are strangers. I don't know if they're really, vagrants or criminals. So what is the immediate solution to what I can do as a resident?
I mean, I think the one call that you could make in that moment is to the police department, describe what you see, and if if you're concerned or you see any activity from that person that concerns you, describe it, and they can send an officer in a squad car, and they won't approach them, with handcuffs. They'll walk up to them and they'll start a conversation and they'll try to get a better sense of. In fact, when we did a tour of Russet not long ago, there was a guy that was sitting up on a wall, and we had a few officers with us, and we sort of saw it in action, the conversation, how it unfolded. Found out he was a veteran, basically got his life story, and then offered him some connection to some services, and that's about as far as they can go under the law anyway, if they're in a public place. But I think the answer is make that call and engage the police officers, because that's what they're trained to do. And they can connect them to services. They do connect them to services all the time.
Okay, do you have any more for public safety? Okay, sorry.
Okay. I'm Julie Hummer. Full disclosure, I'm a candidate for county council, but I want to speak in my role as chair of the Laurel Racetrack Impact Fee Committee, where we make the recommendations. I think everyone's heard some of the projects that come through, but I just want to let people know that between that and the one for the casino, just about everyone here falls in those zones where they would qualify for these grants that can be used for just about anything in the community. As you've heard here, part of it this year is going to be for a fence for public safety, but there's also significant dollars that are going to each of the local elementary schools to do outdoor classrooms, things like that. We have some social services and some food insecurity groups that are going to be working with us more. So there's a lot of opportunities, and we encourage everyone in the community to come to us. The applications will be coming out later this fall so that you can apply for different things, whether needs you see here in the community that you would like to see brought up. Over the years, things that the committee has done include some work on the Oxbow fire trucks here for the fire station. And if you come down 198, you'll see that the median down 198 looks better than anywhere else in this county. And that's because of the money from the racetrack. We make sure that that's beautified, but also has plantings that increase the safety so people can't cut across there. So if you have something in the community in any way, please, you can reach out to me, anyone on the committee, we'll get the application, and those are things that we can do to enhance our whole area around here.
And thank you to Ray in the back of the room for all the years of holding that group together, and the other Ray who's not with us today.
Sorry, good evening. My name is Kevin Aditola. I live not too far from here, so I do have two questions. It's related to traffic. Broadwood Road and 198 every week when I'm going to the gym trying to make a U-turn, there's always an accident. I'm concerned about that. Then also on Whiskey Bottom, people are speeding, like there's a competition going on. I know the Howard County side, they have like a speed camera, so I'm not sure what we can do on that road as well. When I'm going to Walmart, people are speeding. I'm not sure, maybe some competition is going on when it comes to racing. But what can we do in terms of reducing the speed limit? I'm scared of driving and someone hitting me or whatever, but that's a concern. What can we do, especially that road is just every week, just trying to make a U-turn. Someone is hitting somebody. It's just terrible. So that's my concern. Thank you.
I'm going to answer that, but before I do, would you like to tell us about the grant that you got from the, and what it's for?
Sure.
Yeah, microphone back, please.
All right, so again, my name is Kevin Aditola. I'm one of the leaders. Actually, I'm the president of the African Diaspora Affairs of Arundel County. So we started about 3 years ago. We went to the county executive office to talk about the immigrants, the issues of the Africans living in and around the county, the issues that they're dealing with. So we reached out to the office, they were very, very nice, embracing, and they took us, they like, go ahead, start it. And we started meeting at the Rossett Library for 2019 to COVID broke, and we started meeting online, and we decided that, okay, we need something. The community were like, we need something that we can do so people will be aware of. And because there's so many Africans in this area, and sometimes the issues are, sometimes they don't have access to information. I will use the example of the COVID. When COVID happened, there were lots of grants going on. But the people in the community, the business owners, they have no idea that there was a county grant. But thanks to the county executive office, they reached out to the community, applied, and few of the people that applied got it. So I'm grateful for what the county executive is doing in the community when it comes to just everybody. I mean, the county says this is the best place for all, so we are definitely so proud of it. And thank you so much for what you're doing. So we applied for the grant. Sorry, I'm talking too long. We applied for the grant. And we got it for the 5,000 and 5,000 for the repatriation program. Anytime an immigrant dies and they want to send the body back home, this one is very difficult, very expensive. It could cost up to 40,000, 50,000. But what we're doing is to encourage the members of the community that the county does them, and we know that you work so hard to pay taxes, and we're going to be supporting you through the repatriation program. So they got that. So 10 families that apply who get that, and they have to be within 3 miles of the Laurel Racetrack. So that's it. I
thought you were going to tell everybody about the African Heritage Festival at Laurel Racetrack. You did the first one last year at the library at Odenton, and now you're doing it at the racetrack, and the date is when?
Yes, so we're going to be having a second African Heritage Festival at the Laurel Racetrack on September 24 from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. We had a great one at the Odenton Public Library, and it was successful. So thank you.
Great food, great music, and a great time. I just wanted her to say that because, one of the things that's so important in every area of the county is that when communities organize, people get together and they make good things happen for everybody, and it kind of is what makes us a community. So thank you for what you're doing. But I do have an answer to your question. I wasn't just trying to get away from it. Speeding. So I'm going to say something a little bit controversial, which is that we have a Vision Zero plan that is to reduce accidents and get it to zero. It's a statewide plan that Arundel has signed on to. And they have proven that speed cameras do get people to slow down. And when people slow down, they get in fewer wrecks. And the state only lets us do speed cameras by schools unless you get special authorization from the General Assembly. And that special authorization for certain sites is now hard to get in the committee. And what the committee is saying is, we tried to do it on Sands Road this year. What the committee is saying is that go all or nothing. We'll give you authority to do your whole county to make your own decisions about where to put speed cameras if you want to have a speed camera program. So I've talked to some of our delegates and senators about seeking that authorization. And what I'll tell you is, if we get the authorization to do speed cameras, it will be done with the community engaged in the process. So it won't be a big surprise that it shows up somewhere. It will be, you identify a place where there's consistently too much speeding, and then we do the speed camera for a while and see if we can slow it down. Right now, we don't have that authority. So are we going to take a vote on speed cameras now? I know they're not popular with everybody, and we won't. But let's get to other.
Well, in the interest of time, we're going to conclude the public safety portion and move into the open questions and statements. So if anyone has a comment or a question in general, please raise your hand. So I'd like to hear from someone we haven't yet. So this lady right over here.
Hi, I'm Ruth Robinson. I live in Fieldstone. Forgot to answer Kenny's question about the dedicated turn signal that goes north and south on Rockbridge, because we have a tremendous amount of traffic that comes out of Annapolis Junction off of 32, and I don't know where they're going. but, it's very difficult to make a left coming either way on Brock Ridge. And I'm not understanding why there's no dedicated left turn. There's one on 198, but not on Brock Ridge. And it is very dangerous. People running by, it's just craziness.
Has that been ever studied or proposed, do you know?
So, as you probably know, we're improving that intersection. We're adding because right now it's, if you visualize going north on Brock Ridge at 198, there's 2 lanes. We're adding a third. So that'll be a dedicated right, and then it'll be a dedicated through, and then a dedicated left. So you can go 3 different directions. And it's a question for the state, because the state controls the intersection. We're doing the improvement, but I've got to confirm with them that they're going to have a dedicated left arrow for that. That's what you're asking, right?
Why
Left
is that?
arrow.
There's a left lane, but there's.
Sometimes it may be that they want to alternate. So say they hold the traffic coming southbound and let the 2 go at the same time, or let them alternate where you can do a left, you can go straight and go right, and then flip it over to the other side and let them do the same. It's a question of how you got to look at the counts, the traffic counts, which way cars are moving, what the predominant move is, and that's how it'll be designed. So I don't have an answer for exactly how that one's going to be, but I will get back to Vince and let you know.
All right, anyone else? Okay.
Just a quick question. You mentioned the speed cameras. Do the school buses have cameras?
The school buses now do as of this school year, so that we signed a contract that, you may have seen the press conference about this. So when that stop thing opens up, there's a camera on it, and if anybody tries to pass that school bus, they'll take a picture of your license plate, and guess what? You're not allowed to pass school buses when they're stopped, so, yeah. There's one over there, over on the left. There's.
Can I talk, please? I've been standing here for 5 minutes, sir.
You can talk.
All right, thank you. I wanted to respond to the Brock Ridge thing. I know we can't do anything about the Laurel Washington Park. If you go there during rush hour, it's not a parkway, it's a parking lot. And the very first parallel road to that, to the west, is Brock Ridge Road. You go on Brock Ridge Road at any time during rush hour, you'll see hundreds of cars speeding, going across the 2 yellow lines, passing other cars. I go there and I maybe go a little bit over the speed limit, and there's a car in back of me that is anxious to go, despite the fact that there's a curve or a hill, and they'll pass me and go on. And I'll get to Brock Ridge Road and Route 198, and there'll probably be at least 40 or 50 cars there. And they come from the Parkway, take 197, take a right on Brock Ridge Road. That's if they're going north. If they're coming south, they'll come down 32, then take Brock Ridge Road and do the same thing. That road has to be improved. We have to have some kind of people watching and making sure that the people that are speeding are caught. Maybe speed cameras would help. And I live 1 block off of there. This morning, I wanted to go north on Brock Ridge Road. Please conclude your remarks, sir. Okay. There must have been about 50 cars at the light. I had to turn around and go back and go through another area. Thank you.
So we clearly need enforcement there. So we'll take that to the Western District. I'm sure you've talked to them about it a time or two, but we'll keep the pressure on it. You got one over there.
Hello, I'm Simon Wilson. I have vested interest in Maryland City and also over Hanover, Shipley Homestead. But my question is about Maryland City. Sutcliffe, that intersects with Rock Bridge, they need a speed bump. Because I have witnessed many cars speed down the road, and there's been many accidents where they were sideswiped cars. It runs right in front of my home. He totaled 4 cars because it was, I guess, it was a drunk driver, and he hit a car and just bam, bam, bam. All 4 cars were totaled. So, and I've actually seen them speed down so fast they went up in someone's yard because someone was coming from the other way, because there's parking on both sides. So, speed bump, because a camera won't work because cars are parked on the side, so you won't be able to get the license plates. So, speed bump, and I've actually called the county several times, and I have to jump through hoops and solicit from all my neighbors. I think he's a petition or something to try to get them to look into getting a speed bump. But my concern is there's 2 elementary schools there. And now that the schools start at the same time, well, close to the same time, there's a lot of little kids walking up and down the sidewalk. I've seen them run across the street without looking. And if these cars are coming down really fast, I do not want anyone to lose their baby because someone is speeding down the road. So please look into that.
I'm sorry, can you state your name so we can follow up?
It's Tucker Wilson.
And if before you leave, you can check in either with Chris Phipps or Layla about those hoops and how that process works, that'd probably be good.
Well, if I could, there is a committee that's been established for Summersville, and so for traffic engineering, they're meeting with our traffic engineering division, I think next week. So they're already,
Okay.
I guess the community had a petition, and they're following up, and they're meeting, so.
Thanks for coming, Chris. What would I do without Chris Phipps? I don't think, well, let's do it, let's, yeah, raise your hand.
All right, do we have anyone else?
How about the Maglev project? Have you heard anything lately? I think it goes literally under my house, or will, possibly.
I have not heard a peep since the county put in their response during the environmental impact statement and identified all of the environmental challenges and quality of life challenges after meeting with many of you. And I have trouble believing that it is financially feasible even. And I know that the focus is on improving the quality of the trains that we have and doing more, faster and more frequent trains between Baltimore and Washington, and investing in those. I haven't heard much about anything about the maglev as far as getting to the next stage of the process or anything like that. But our comments were pretty scathing about the impact on Anne Arundel County that we sent in.
All right, that concludes the open forum portion. So, County Executive, do you have any closing remarks?
Mostly just thank you for coming out and raising all these issues. I was glad to hear that there was a lot on education in particular. Sometimes there aren't, and it's more on just environmental issues or public safety issues. So thank you for coming out. Good job.